The moment Isabella De Luca walked into the gala on another man's arm, the most powerful crime boss in Chicago felt something he hadn't felt in years. Cornered. Not by bullets. Not by rivals. Not by law enforcement. By humiliation. The cameras caught it instantly. Her red dress. Her smile. And the man beside her, Luca Barone, the one criminal bold enough to challenge Moretti territory. It wasn't just a public appearance. It was a declaration of war. Every politician in the room noticed. Every investor noticed. Every enemy watching from the shadows noticed. Don Alessandro Moretti stood still, champagne glass untouched, expression carved from stone. But inside, his empire was built on perception. And perception was slipping. He had two options: react and look emotional, or counter and reclaim control. That's when he saw her. Vanessa Cole, standing near the balcony doors. Not networking. Not watching Isabella. Not impressed by power. She was reviewing financial reports on her tablet, because unlike everyone else in the room, she actually cared about the Foundation's community work. She didn't orbit his world. She operated outside of it. And that made her perfect. Alessandro moved toward her with the calm of a predator who had already chosen his move. Dance with me. No explanation. No charm. Just command. Vanessa looked up slowly. I don't dance for strategy, she said. That answer alone should have made him walk away. Instead, something in her refusal intrigued him. Tonight, he replied evenly, I do. She followed his gaze across the ballroom. She saw Isabella. She saw Luca. She understood immediately. You're trying to prove something. I'm trying to correct a narrative. You mean protect your ego. The music swelled. The room watched. Alessandro extended his hand anyway. For a long moment, she didn't take it. Then she did. And that's when everything changed. The ballroom lights seemed brighter as they stepped onto the dance floor. Not because they were. Because everyone was watching. Flashbulbs popped from across the room. Conversations slowed. Luca Barone leaned closer to Isabella and whispered something that made her lips curve. Alessandro placed one hand carefully at Vanessa's waist. Controlled. Measured. Respectful enough to appear gentlemanly. Firm enough to appear possessive. The orchestra shifted into a slow waltz. He guided her smoothly across the floor. To the outside world, it looked effortless. But Vanessa didn't melt into the performance. She stayed aware. You could have chosen anyone, she murmured as they turned. I did. That's not what I meant. He held her gaze. You're not connected to my world. You're not affiliated with any family. You're clean. So I'm safe optics. Yes. The bluntness surprised even him. Vanessa let out a soft breath. Not offended, not flattered. Just analyzing. Do you know what makes this transparent? She asked quietly. He didn't answer. You didn't look at me until she walked in. The orchestra swelled again as they pivoted. Across the room, Isabella's smile thinned. Luca's jaw tightened slightly. Alessandro's grip on Vanessa shifted, not tighter, but closer. I don't like being predictable, he said. You are predictable, Vanessa replied calmly. Powerful men always are when pride is involved. That landed harder than Luca's presence ever could. 4 years, Alessandro had built an empire on anticipation. He read people before they spoke. He dismantled threats before they formed. And yet this woman, who refused to be intimidated, was reading him in real time. You think this is about pride? He asked quietly. I think, she said, that you built a kingdom where no one is allowed to embarrass you. And tonight she tried. The words struck deeper than he expected. He didn't react. But he didn't deny it either. They turned again, the hem of her dress brushing against polished marble. You could have ignored her, Vanessa continued. That would have been weakness. No, she said softly. That would have been indifference. That word lingered between them. Indifference. He had never needed it. Control had always been enough. But tonight, control felt thinner than usual. As they moved through another turn, he noticed something else. She wasn't performing for the cameras. She wasn't leaning closer to make headlines. She wasn't smiling for photographers. She was simply dancing. And somehow that made the moment feel less strategic. More real. Dangerously real. "You don't seem afraid," he observed. "Of you." "Yes." She met his eyes fully now. "I respect consequences. Not intimidation." That answer did something unexpected inside him. It didn't challenge his authority. It humanized him. And he wasn't used to that. The music began to slow. Applause trickled through the ballroom. The dance was nearly over. Across the floor, Isabella finally looked away. Luca's posture stiffened. The narrative had shifted. Alessandro had reclaimed the room. He should have felt satisfaction. Victory. Instead, he felt something else. Curiosity. When the final note ended, he released Vanessa gently. "Thank you," he said. "For being convenient," she replied. "For being honest." She studied him for a long moment. Then she said the one thing no one else in that room would dare say. "You didn't need to prove anything tonight. But you chose to anyway." He didn't respond. Because she was right. She stepped back. The cameras immediately began snapping again. Headlines were already forming. "New woman beside the Don. Isabella replaced." Vanessa glanced at the photographers, then back at him. "You know this will follow me tomorrow." "I can handle that," he said. "That's not what I'm worried about." And with that, she walked off the dance floor. Not waiting for approval. Not asking permission. Leaving him standing there, powerful, feared, respected, and unexpectedly unsettled. Because something about that dance hadn't gone according to plan. He had meant to use her. To shift perception. To neutralize humiliation. To reassert dominance. And he had succeeded. But as he watched her disappear into the crowd, one realization pressed quietly into his mind. He hadn't been thinking about Isabella for the last 3 minutes. He hadn't been thinking about Luca. He hadn't even been thinking about the cameras. He had been thinking about Vanessa Cole. And that was far more dangerous than humiliation. Because humiliation could be avenged. Rivals could be crushed. Narratives could be rewritten. But a woman who wasn't afraid of him? A woman who saw through him? A woman who refused to orbit his power? That was unpredictable. And Don Alessandro Moretti hated unpredictability. As the orchestra resumed lighter music and guests returned to their conversations, his consigliere approached quietly. "Should we respond to Barone's move?" Alessandro's eyes remained fixed on the place where Vanessa had stood. "No," he said calmly. "Why not?" Because the real shift tonight hadn't come from a rival. It had come from a woman who refused to be used. But he didn't say that aloud. Instead, he adjusted his cufflinks and replied. Let him think he made the first move. Across the ballroom, Isabella laughed too loudly. Luca whispered into her ear again. They thought the night belonged to them. They were wrong. But not in the way they expected. Because the most powerful man in the room hadn't just protected his pride. He had just taken a step toward something far more dangerous. Something he didn't control. And it started with a dance. By sunrise, the dance had turned into a headline. Not a quiet mention on society pages. A storm. Moretti's new queen. Isabella replaced at Gala Showdown. Mystery woman beside Chicago's most feared Dawn. Photos of Alessandro and Vanessa mid-turn flooded every outlet, legitimate press, gossip columns, underground blogs tied to rival families. The image was perfect. His hand at her waist. Her eyes lifted toward him. Isabella blurred in the background. It looked intimate. It looked deliberate. It looked like victory. And that was exactly the problem. Vanessa Cole woke up to 12 missed calls. 3 from board members of the youth center. 4 from reporters. 2 from numbers she didn't recognize. 1 from her mother. She stared at the headlines on her phone in disbelief. She had agreed to one dance. 1. Now she was a narrative. She dressed quickly and drove straight to the youth center on the south side. The building was old but alive, bright murals on brick walls, children's artwork taped near the entrance. It mattered to her. That's why she had agreed to oversee the foundation's funding in the first place. She believed that even men like Alessandro Moretti could funnel money into something real. Inside, her assistant rushed toward her. "Vanessa, there are reporters outside. Let them stand. They're asking if you're involved with him." "I'm involved with the budget," she replied sharply. But she knew this wouldn't disappear on its own. By noon, speculation escalated. Anonymous sources claimed she had been secretly dating the Don. Others implied she was part of a strategic move to undermine Isabella's alliance with Barone. And then the worst one appeared. Insiders suggest staged publicity. Her name was being folded into a war she didn't belong to. That was when she made a decision. If Alessandro Moretti had used her as optics, he was going to face her without cameras. His penthouse sat above the city like a throne room. Glass walls. Armed security. Silence thick as velvet. Vanessa walked through the lobby without hesitation. The guards recognized her from the gala and stepped aside after a brief call upstairs. She didn't wait to be announced. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into controlled luxury. Marble floors, muted lighting, expensive minimalism. Alessandro stood near the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled neatly at the forearms. He turned slowly when he heard her steps. He did not look surprised. "You shouldn't have come here alone," he said calmly. "I shouldn't have danced with you either," she replied. A faint flicker crossed his expression, not anger. Interest. The room cleared instantly at a glance from him. His men vanished into side corridors. Now it was just the two of them. "You've caused a problem," she said, holding up her phone. He didn't look at it. "I solved a problem," he corrected. "For you." Silence stretched between them. "For you," she repeated. "Not for me." He studied her carefully. "You knew why I asked. I knew you were protecting your pride. I didn't agree to become collateral damage." Her voice didn't shake. It didn't need to. "You're strong," he said quietly. "That's not the point." She stepped closer. "Your rivals don't just attack you. They attack the people near you. Do you understand that?" His jaw tightened slightly. "Yes. And yet you put me there anyway." That landed. Because it was true. He had calculated the optics. He had not calculated the consequences for her. For the first time since she walked in, his voice lowered. "I misjudged that." It was not an apology. But it was not dismissal either. Vanessa crossed her arms. "I need you to correct this." "How?" "Publicly. You clarify that I'm not involved in your personal life." "That would weaken the move." She stared at him. There it is. He didn't deny it. Everything was leverage in his world. Every word. Every image. Every alliance. "Is that what I am?" she asked quietly. "A move." He held her gaze. "Yes." The honesty was brutal. But then he added, "At first." That shifted the air in the room. She didn't speak. So he did. "I built my life on anticipation. Isabella walked in with Barone to test me. I countered. And I was convenient." Yes. The bluntness might have angered another woman. But Vanessa valued truth more than comfort. "And now?" she asked. He hesitated. Not visibly, but internally. Because this part wasn't strategy. This is no longer convenient. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Explain." He walked slowly toward the bar, poured 2 glasses of water instead of whiskey, and handed one to her. She didn't miss that detail. "I expected you to enjoy the attention," he said. "Most people would." "I'm not most people." "I know." That word carried weight. He leaned lightly against the counter. "You didn't try to impress me. You didn't lean closer for cameras. You didn't smile strategically. You criticized me mid-dance. You needed it. A faint shadow of amusement touched his eyes. Yes. Silence again. Then she said the thing that forced him to confront something deeper. You've built an empire where no one tells you the truth. He didn't respond immediately, because she was right. Fear disguised itself as loyalty in his world. Respect disguised itself as silence. And you don't like that I do, she continued. He met her gaze steadily. I don't like that you're right. That was the closest thing to vulnerability he had offered anyone in years. Vanessa studied him carefully. He wasn't performing. There were no cameras. No rivals. Just two people in a quiet room overlooking the city. I won't be used again, she said firmly. You won't be. That's not reassurance. That's power speaking. He stepped closer now, not threatening, not dominating. Grounded. You won't be, he repeated, softer this time. There was something different in his tone. Not command. Not calculation. Choice. She watched him for a long moment. Then prove it. How? Don't spin this. Don't twist it into advantage. Fix it. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed on the counter. A message from his consigliere. Baronne escalating. Underground chatter increasing. They're targeting her credibility. He read it silently. Vanessa saw the shift in his expression. What now? They're pushing the narrative harder. Of course they are. And if I distance myself publicly, he said, they'll interpret it as weakness. And if you don't, she replied, I become a target. There it was. The crossroads. Power. Or protection. He had always chosen power. Without hesitation. Without regret. Until now. Vanessa set her glass down. I won't beg you to choose decency, she said quietly. But understand something. He waited. If you let them drag my name through this, I won't be the one who loses. Her voice wasn't threatening. It was factual. And for the first time in a long time, Alessandro Moretti felt the weight of a decision that had nothing to do with territory. She turned toward the elevator. Vanessa. She stopped but didn't face him. I don't want you collateral. Then stop treating me like leverage. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside. And just before they closed, she looked at him one last time. You asked me to dance to protect your pride. The doors began sliding shut. Now decide what you're willing to protect. And then she was gone. Alessandro stood alone in the silence of his penthouse. 4 years, decisions had been simple. Eliminate threats. Control perception. Expand influence. But this required something he had not exercised in a long time. Restraint. And as his phone buzzed again with updates about Baronne's moves, one truth pressed quietly into his thoughts. He had used her to protect his image. But now, he would have to decide whether to protect her instead. The attack didn't come from the front. It never does. It came quietly. Strategically. Like all good lies do. 3 days after Vanessa walked out of Alessandro's penthouse, a new headline surfaced. Not from a mainstream outlet. From a media blog known for exclusive leaks connected to the underworld. Sources confirm Moretti's gala dance was paid PR move. The article was detailed. Too detailed. It claimed Vanessa Cole had been compensated to publicly appear beside Don Alessandro Moretti in order to counter Isabella De Luca's alliance with Luca Barone. It implied contracts, payments, an arrangement, and worst of all, it painted her as willing. Within hours, the story spread. Mainstream media picked it up cautiously. Social media did not. She played her role. Another woman chasing power. He pays, they pose. Vanessa was in the youth center office when she saw it. The air left her lungs slowly as she read the article. It wasn't just an attack on her reputation. It was an attack on her integrity. Her phone started ringing again. Board members. Parents. Volunteers. One message hurt more than the rest. We need to discuss how this affects the center's image. Her hands tightened around the phone. This was exactly what she had warned him about. Collateral damage. Across the city, inside a private conference room in Moretti's tower, the atmosphere was colder than usual. Alessandro sat at the head of the table. His consigliere stood to his right. Two senior capos waited in silence. A large screen displayed the article. "Barone's fingerprints are all over this," one capo said. "Indirect," the consigliere added. "But clear." Alessandro didn't respond. His eyes remained fixed on the words. Paid. Staged. Manipulation. He had built his empire on strategy. On perception. On controlling narratives before they controlled him. But this narrative, he hadn't written it. "She is not family," one capo said carefully. "We issue a neutral denial. Distance her. Protect the organization." "Agreed," another added. "If you defend her too strongly, it validates the connection." Silence stretched. They were offering him the safe move. The predictable move. The move he had made 100 times before. Minimize exposure. Redirect attention. Let the storm move on. "She knew the risks," the consigliere said quietly. "You warned her." Alessandro's jaw tightened. No. He hadn't warned her. He had used her. There was a difference. "She asked for clarification," the consigliere continued. "If we issue a standard statement, this fades in a week." Fade for whom? Not for her. For him. Vanessa's name would remain attached to suspicion. And in his world, suspicion lingered. Alessandro stood slowly. The room straightened instantly. "What happens," he asked calmly, "if we say nothing?" "They escalate," the capo replied. "They push harder. They'll dig into her past. They'll pressure the youth center." Alessandro's eyes darkened slightly. Barone wasn't attacking him directly. He was attacking something softer. Something he believed was expendable. And that was a mistake. "Prepare a press briefing," Alessandro said. The room froze. The consigliere frowned slightly. A written statement would be cleaner. "I didn't ask for clean." He turned toward the window overlooking Chicago's skyline. "They want a narrative." His voice lowered. "I'll give them one." Vanessa was leaving the youth center when she saw the notification. Moretti Holdings, live press briefing, 4 p.m. Her heart pounded. He hadn't called her. He hadn't warned her. She didn't know what he was going to say. And that scared her more than the headlines. The press room was packed. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters whispered in anticipation. This wasn't a routine appearance. Don Alessandro Moretti rarely addressed the media personally. When he did, it mattered. He stepped onto the platform precisely at 4. Black suit. No tie. Expression unreadable. The room fell silent. He didn't begin with pleasantries. He didn't deflect. He looked directly into the cameras. The reports suggesting Vanessa Cole was compensated to attend the gala are false. Murmurs rippled. He continued. "She was not paid." Flashbulbs exploded. "I asked her to dance." He paused deliberately. "For strategic reasons." Gasps filled the room. Reporters exchanged stunned glances. He had just admitted manipulation. "I made that choice," he said evenly. "Not her." The room was frozen now. "This was my decision. Not a staged agreement. Not a transaction." His eyes sharpened slightly. "And anyone implying she was compensated is lying." A reporter raised a hand quickly. "Mr. Moretti, are you admitting you used her for optics?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." More murmurs. "And that is on me." Vanessa watched from her car outside the youth center, heart racing. He could still pivot. He could still redirect. Instead, he leaned into the truth. "I built much of my life on calculated perception," he continued. "This was another calculation." Silence. "But it will not be hers to carry." Another reporter shouted, "Are you involved with her?" He paused. And for a split second, the room held its breath. "No." The word was firm. "She owes me nothing. She agreed to a dance. That is all." He stepped closer to the podium. This is the first honest thing I've done publicly in a long time." That sentence hit harder than anything else. A mafia boss admitting dishonesty. Not forced. Not cornered. Chosen. The press conference ended without further elaboration. No threats. No redirection. No spin. Just truth. Back inside his tower, the room was quiet again. His consigliere approached carefully. "You exposed vulnerability." "Yes." "It changes perception." "Yes." "Barone will interpret this as weakness." Alessandro adjusted his cufflink slowly. Let him. He had spent years being feared, respected, calculated. Tonight, he had chosen something different. Not softness. Not surrender. Integrity. And that was far more unpredictable. Vanessa sat in her car long after the broadcast ended. The headlines were already shifting. Moretti takes responsibility. Don admits strategic use. Unexpected honesty from crime lord. Her phone buzzed. Board members retracting concern. Parents expressing relief. Volunteers sending support. The weight on her chest eased slightly. He hadn't minimized it. He hadn't distanced himself. He had stepped forward. And that mattered. But honesty didn't erase the first move. It didn't erase the risk. Her phone buzzed again. A single message. From him. "I meant what I said." She stared at it. Then typed back. "This doesn't fix everything." 3 dots appeared. Then, "I know." She hesitated. Then typed one final message. "You get one chance." Several seconds passed. Then his reply. "Understood." She leaned back in her seat, staring at the fading sunlight over Chicago. He had chosen truth over empire optics. But one honest act did not build trust. It only opened the door. And for the first time since that dance, the power balance had shifted. Because now, he wasn't protecting his pride. He was trying to earn something. And earning was harder than ruling. 3 weeks passed. No new headlines. No retaliation from Barone. No public appearances beside Vanessa. On the surface, everything returned to normal. But for Alessandro Moretti, nothing felt normal. He went back to meetings, territory negotiations, financial movements, strategic planning, expansion discussions. Men still lowered their eyes when he entered a room. Politicians still shook his hand too eagerly. His empire remained intact. But something had shifted inside him. For years, every decision had been about control. Control the narrative. Control the territory. Control the fear. Control the outcome. But honesty had no guarantees. And yet he hadn't regretted it. Not once. Across the city, Vanessa focused on rebuilding quiet stability. The youth center's funding was secure. Donations had actually increased after the press conference. Parents felt reassured. Volunteers returned to routine. But she didn't romanticize what had happened. He had used her. Then he had defended her. Both were true. She respected the second. She hadn't forgotten the first. He hadn't contacted her again after that final message. No pressure. No grand gestures. No showing up unexpectedly. And that restraint told her more than any apology could. The invitation arrived on a Thursday morning. Hand-delivered. Not embossed in gold. Not attached to a foundation gala. Simple. Southside Community Fundraiser Saturday, 6:30 p.m. hosted by Vanessa Cole. She hadn't sent it to him. He had requested it through proper channels. Quietly. That alone made her pause. She debated for several minutes before sending one word back through her assistant. Approved. Saturday evening was nothing like the gala. No chandeliers. No security perimeter. No media vans parked outside. Just folding tables, string lights hanging across the courtyard, and children running between chairs with paper plates of food. Laughter echoed naturally. No one was performing. Vanessa wore a simple navy dress. No dramatic statement. No armor. She was greeting guests when the subtle shift happened. Not fear. Not whispers. Just awareness. Alessandro Moretti walked into the courtyard alone. No motorcade. No visible bodyguards. No entourage. Just him. Dark suit. No tie. Sleeves slightly rolled. People recognized him, of course. But here, he wasn't the Don. He was a donor. And he behaved like one. He shook hands politely. Thanked volunteers. Spoke softly to parents about the programs. He didn't dominate the space. He adjusted to it. Vanessa watched from across the courtyard. She was assessing something different this time. Not power. Consistency. After 20 minutes, he finally approached her. No cameras. No rivals watching. No ex in sight. "Good evening," he said. She studied him for a moment. "You look underdressed for intimidation." A faint smile touched his lips. That wasn't the objective. Silence lingered between them, but not uncomfortable. Grounded. He glanced around at the lights, the children, the small stage being prepared for local performers. "This matters to you," he said. "Yes. I can see why." She noticed something subtle. He wasn't scanning for threats. He wasn't calculating leverage. He was present. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I wanted to." That word again. Wanted. Not needed. Not calculated. Wanted. A soft instrumental song began playing from the small speakers near the stage. Couples began moving casually onto the open space between tables. Vanessa crossed her arms lightly. "Are you here to correct another narrative?" "No." "To prove something?" "No." He held her gaze steadily. "I'm here because 3 weeks ago, I asked you to dance for the wrong reason." She didn't look away. "And now?" "And now," he said calmly, "I'm asking because I don't want to let that moment end there." The air shifted slightly. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Honest. "You don't let things go easily," she observed. "Not when they matter." She stepped closer. "And this matters?" "Yes." No hesitation. No performance. Just certainty. The music softened. Children laughed somewhere behind them. He extended his hand. Not commanding. Not strategic. Simply offering. "Dance with me." This time, there were no flashbulbs. No political observers. No rivals calculating dominance. Just neighbors chatting under string lights. Vanessa looked at his hand. Then at his eyes. She was searching for something. Pride. Ego. Strategy. She didn't find it. She found restraint. Choice. And something quieter. Vulnerability. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. No applause followed. No headlines were forming. They stepped into the open space casually, blending among other couples. His hand rested at her waist, lighter than before. Respectful. Measured. Not claiming. Not displaying. Just holding. They moved slowly, without choreography. No polished waltz. No strategic positioning. Just rhythm. "You're different here," she said softly. "I don't need to be feared here. And out there." He paused slightly. "Out there, fear built everything. And here." "Here," he said quietly, "I'd rather build something else." That answer settled between them. He wasn't abandoning his empire. He wasn't pretending to be harmless. He was choosing, selectively, to be honest. "That press conference," she said, "cost you." "Yes." "You knew it would." "Yes." "Why do it?" He looked at her fully now. "Because protecting my pride stopped feeling important. And protecting me felt important." "Yes." The simplicity of it disarmed her more than any grand declaration could have. The song slowed. The courtyard lights glowed softly around them. 3 weeks ago, he had asked her to dance to protect his ego. Tonight, there was no ego left in the movement. Just presence. When the song ended, neither stepped away immediately. The world didn't shift dramatically. No empire fell. No rival attacked. But something far more significant had happened. The most powerful crime boss in Chicago had stepped into a space where control wasn't guaranteed. And he had stayed. Vanessa studied him for one final moment. "You get one chance," she reminded him. "I know. And if you slip back into strategy, then you walk away." He didn't argue. He didn't negotiate. He accepted the terms. And that acceptance mattered more than dominance ever could. Around them, laughter continued. Music restarted. Life moved forward. He had asked her to dance to avoid humiliation. But somewhere between pride and truth, he had discovered something unexpected. He couldn't let her go. Not because she was leverage. Not because she was optics. But because she saw him clearly. And chose to stay anyway. And for a man who controlled everything, being chosen freely was the one thing he had never owned. Until now.